There are only two ways to create something meaningful in life. We either move from vision to action, or we move from action to vision. I'll show you the difference between Steve Jobs and Muhammad and how they created Apple and Islam. So we first start off, there are two ways of having a process of creation. When we move from vision to action, it means we have a vision and we create a clear mission from that, a clear goal. We turn that into several projects. Some of them will fail, others will succeed. And we just take massive action. So we really move from top down. A vision then usually comes in the form of a divine inspiration, and these are quite rare to have, yet all the prophets in the past moved this way, and they usually went first into the desert or into a cave. And you also have the shamanic ritual, which is called a vision quest, is where you really go to spirit, go to God, go to the divine and ask for a vision and pray for it and sacrifice something in return for that as well. And we can also move from action to vision. That usually comes more from a serendipitous event. You have an action and it becomes a little bit more successful and it grows into a project and it takes form in this physical world. And then you all of a sudden set a clear goal from that, and you again align all your projects towards achieving that goal. And once you achieve that goal, you will start thinking even bigger and you create a vision from bottom up. And the difference between both approaches is of course quite obvious, and the result is also a lot different. So for Steve Jobs, his action was meeting Steve Wozniak, and in their garage they shared their passion for computers and they just did daily tinkering, and all of a sudden together they assembled the Apple I. Although Steve Wozniak did most of the work, Steve was more of the mastermind behind the process when it came to the business side of it. So he turned those actions into projects and they created a company called Apple. They built the first computer, the Apple I, and they got funding of $250,000 and they sold over 100 pieces, completing their initial mission, which was to sell fully assembled computers. And from that goal, Steve Jobs especially really saw that there was a market, there was a fit for this idea. People were interested in computers, and he had a vision of designing beautiful products and transforming the relationships between human beings and technology. And that is what he did. He brought personal computers to everyday homes of everyday people, pretty much everywhere around the world. And although Steve Jobs moved from the garage and created the biggest company on the planet currently, this progress didn't come without a cost. Because when we move from action to vision, we usually start materially and then work our way more spiritually. And Steve Jobs himself went to India, was obviously a hippie, and then later turned CEO. He continuously struggled between moving between his inner and his outer world. And because he did so, we can also see that where Apple sells beautifully designed products, but it reflects more precision and control, and it has an enclosed ecosystem, and it's therefore less open to outside input, and it leans more towards the matter side than the spirit side. And Apple right now is also a company that is more focused around profit than being truly a visionary and transforming the relationship between human beings and technology. They're not innovating as much as they used to. This is not meant as a critique, but this is just a natural consequence, because when we move from action and rise that into vision, usually the vision gets distorted towards the end and it becomes harder to uphold. Muhammad, on the other hand, the prophet who spread Islam, went into the cave of Hira, and what happened there, he described it as being seized, taken almost, where he was seized by a vision, a revelation, where he met Archangel Gabriel and he spoke the word Ikra to him, which means to read and to recite. He got a command to spread Islam and spread monotheism. And often this happens like this, where a vision seizes us and it comes always quite unexpected. And when he returned back to Mecca, which was at the time ruled by tribal conflict, war and social inequality. He felt very unsure and insecure, but he was encouraged by his wife and a scholar that indeed this was a true vision, this was a true revelation, and this wasn't something evil, but that he was preaching for something. He also predicted that he was going to be faced with rejection and persecution. So he first started spreading his message privately, but the instant he went public and he followed his mission, his goal of saving the people and calling them to monotheism, he got utterly rejected in Mecca and he had to face persecution, and so did his followers. And in the end, he ended up moving to Medina, where he did find support, and he managed to spread Islam across the territory of Arabia. But again, this also didn't come without a cost, and especially when we move from vision into action, we start off with spirit. Well, when moving then to the material world, it usually offers extreme resistance, and that is why Muhammad also had to go through so much turmoil and had to lose his social standing, his security, in order to uphold his vision. So when we're looking to create something meaningful in life, we can choose to move both ways. And again, it's easy to become critical of these men and to say that Islam has some negative consequences, just like Apple has, but these are men that acted, they risked, and they created something. And the only thing that we can truly influence in the end in our reality is ourselves. And it's really good to create something of unique value. It doesn't have to be as big as Apple or as big as Islam. You just have to start and bring forth what is within you, to share your gift with the world. That is what it means to live honorably. And there are two ways to do this. I really recommend to start from action, see what you're already doing in your life, and then slowly create some projects from that. Organize what you're doing so you become more effective and more paternate as to what you do and do not do, and then create some goals. It doesn't have to be many, maybe 3 to 5 goals in different areas, and then you can create an overarching vision or maybe a few visions that really solidify in your direction. But again, you have to be aware that this approach becomes easier to actually manifest something into the physical world, but it becomes harder to uphold the spiritual qualities of it. Now, if we move in reverse, the best way to do that, I would only recommend to do that after you've gone from action to vision in the first place, because that's a little bit easier to begin with and more grounded. And then it's very much possible that a vision like that can seize you, and it doesn't have to be so big. And the best option, if you're truly interested in something like that, is to do a vision quest, which is an indigenous, very ancient ritual, probably one of the oldest rituals in the world. It's where you fast from food and usually water in nature in order to pray and receive a vision for your life. It's really important to notice the difference, because those visions are usually a little bit more vague. And I'm not saying vague in the sense that it's less clear, but it's not, say, build the biggest company on the planet. That is not going to be your vision. Well, if you move from action to vision, usually the vision becomes a little bit more clear. And this is why I created the Creator OS, which you can view in the description. And that really takes you from action to vision, and how to set to-do lists, create projects, set goals, create visions. But it can also easily incorporate moving from vision into action. And that's it. If you're truly looking to create a great life, you cannot overlook your own gift that is within you, and we need to cultivate that persistently, have faith in that process, and bring it out into the world, regardless of what the effects are or the results. Bringing your gift out in the world is a way of living a good life.